Welcome into this Five Clubs conversation. And I hope you love this conversation as much as I know that I'm going to, because everybody out there who is devoted and loyal to Five Clubs knows I have great appreciation for the written word, specifically the men, the women who have written about golf through time. And the man who's joining me in just a moment has done it expertly, but more importantly, he's done it with soul. Because I've said, because this studio is a reflection of what I think about golf, it's personal. We all have a personal relationship with this game. And there are a lot of times we're like, I don't even know why I invest in you, because you're giving nothing back to me. But at the end of the day, there's something that happens. It could be a shot, it could be a thought, a comment that brings you back. And the relationship continues. Well, his new book, The Playing Lesson, is about all of those things. And that is why I'm looking forward to this conversation with the great writer, Michael Bamberger.
When your hands are consistent, your game can go anywhere. Align Max, our newest raised ridge technology, designed to keep you and your game locked in on every shot. Only from Golf Pride. Respect the grip.
And with that, Michael Bamberger, good to see you, my friend.
Same here, Gary. Thank you.
This book, it's titled The Playing Lesson. And I think there's so many things just on the cover that are amusing, and reflective of what golf is, because there's a relatability for you to the best players in the world, because you have your name at the bottom of a condensed little leaderboard with Scheffler, McIlroy, Thomas, and there you are at plus 18. But the title of the book is The Playing Lesson, A Duffer's Life Among the Pros. And it's not just you covering the sport. It's you doing what you've always done, immersing yourself in the fabric of this game that is played all over the place, at places that are very high priced and places that are very modestly priced, and by people who can play like Scotty Scheffler, and people that you look at and you go, God, really, why do you do this? What's redeemable about this? Where did the idea of doing this, where this is not you doing something selfishly so people can know about how you play golf, it's you immersing yourself in all that golf is over the course of a year. When did you say, you know what, I want to do this?
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for all of that. Thank you for that generous introduction. I hugely appreciate it. You know, I had not thought about this until now, but like when you see this, you know, here's Scheffler 9 under, McIlroy 8 under, Thomas at 6 under, me at 18 over. I could not do that for one round of golf. Like, I could not stay within 27 shots to Scotty, 26 shots to Scotty Scheffler for one round to go. So yes, this has nothing to do with me, and I actually flat out apologize for it, but not really an apology in the beginning of the book. It's just like, I want to stand for you. Yeah, I get to go, and this is my whole thing in all of my sports running. It's like, I get to go places that you may very well not get to go to. I get to go to Augusta National every year, or I get to, you know, play this course or that course, and as you just said, you know, not necessarily fancy places. So I view my life as standing in for the reader. I want to take the reader on the adventure that I go on. So the specific part of your question is, you know, where did this particular idea come from? You would know the name, our younger viewers might not, but there was a great writer from yesteryear named George Plimpton. Mm-hmm. George Plimpton, he would despise this phrase, never use it, but his thing was participatory journalism. So for instance, at one point he played with the New York Philharmonic. All he had to do was hold the triangle and dong at one time. And Leonard Bernstein, the great conductor, was like, no, you're not doing it. But he did a lot of this stuff. His most famous one, do you remember Paper Lion?
Oh, absolutely, but that's not the one that in my lifetime was the most impactful one. In 1985, when he wrote the article about Sid Finch, I was not a gullible kid. I was a senior in high school when that was written. I grew up a Yankee fan, and in the mid-'80s, the Yankees stunk, and the Mets had hope. Dwight Gooden had this amazing season in 1984, And he writes this article that comes out on April 1st of 1985 that also coincides with, essentially opening day. And that landed in my driveway, and I consumed SI as soon as I got it every week. And I called my father at his office, and I said, my dad was a college pitcher. He pitched at the University of Florida. I said, Dad, you won't believe this guy that the Mets have signed. I bought it. So yeah, do I know George Plimpton? You're damn right I know George Plimpton.
So just for those who don't, so George Plimpton was a Mets prospect.
Yes.
He was a Harvard dropout. He was a left-hander, grew up in an orphanage, and his fastball topped out at 168, which is exceptional. Also fictional. So it was the greatest April Fool's Day prank of all time.
It's one of the greatest things I've ever seen and read, obviously.
And okay, so the editor of Sports Illustrated in that period.
And he pitched in working boots that were untied.
And in the photos that ran in the Sports Illustrated story, he had a bag over his head because he was such a secret. Nobody could know who he was. So yes, that's the legend of Sid Finch, written by this very erudite man who our friend Jaime Diaz, I know we'll talk about him later, got to meet several times. I don't think I ever met him, but I talked to him several times. So long before he did that, he played in a series of pro-ams, I know you know this, in 1966, and wrote an extremely amusing book about it called The Bogeyman. Hush, hush, here comes the bogeyman. It's from an old British drinking song. So my editor, young Jofi Ferrari Adler at Simon & Schuster, he's got his own imprint there called Avid Reader Press. He and I were playing golf together just, I think, 2 summers ago. And he said, nobody's done the Plimpton thing since. And he got that far in the sentence. It's like, I'm totally in. So the idea was, try to do what George did, see if you can play in some pro-ams and write about it. Not so much, now George does this because he's George. He does write about his own experience. I write about my own experience trying to stand in for the ordinary golfer.
But you also, along the way, you contribute in volunteer services. You caddy in tour pro-ams, which are an amazing experience. I've played in a handful of them myself. There's so many things in this that touched me, that made me smile, all the way to the conclusion of the book. And one of the things early on in the book was something, and I'll start with the professional golf part of this, because you think professional golf, there's been erosion of things that you really valued and loved. And it doesn't mean that the things and all the things that the way that they are now, there's no reason, if you like it the way you like it, I don't try to tell people they shouldn't like things they like. But the meritocracy of the game and stuff like that. And there are people who play golf now. Not many of them speak at length because I think they're taught or instructed by their handlers that there's no value in it. Let us control your messaging. But Lucas Glover is somebody who, because he's had this kind of renaissance in his mid-40s, people want his thoughts on things, and he's willing to give them. And I knew this a long, long time ago, that he actually reads books and has always been a reader of books. And I was so struck by you meeting him at a deli in New York City. Like that, to me, that's cool. Like, we don't associate professional golf with New York City. We don't associate a son of the South with having a love affair with New York City, which Lucas does, and he's a diehard Yankee fan. So this conversation you had with him in New York City struck me because he said something to you about, and this was a while ago, that to see somebody when they win something, the next time the peer group sees them, right, whether it's locker room or on the range, right, and there's like this, hey man, good for you, because that space is a very elusive space to enter into. And he's like, that doesn't mean as much to me anymore, but I want you to comment on that, because the pursuit of this, having caddied for guys who played all over the world, and they're just trying to either keep the lights on or keep the dream alive, the idea of achieving in this space is amazing, and it's rare. And when your peers acknowledge you, I've also seen that as well. Adam Scott in 2013, when he won the Masters, the next time he played competitively was at the Players. And that was when it was still in May. And I happened to be on the practice tee when he walked out there. And it touched the hell out of me. Mm-hmm. So I just start with Lucas and just this idea of these guys doing what they do and the acknowledgement from the peer group.
Well, you've picked up on a lot there, and it's like everything in life and in golf. You said so many things that touched so many things for me. Like, for instance, I knew Luke loved baseball, and we've talked about baseball. I did not know he was a Yankees guy, and you tell me, was his father or his grandfather? I know he was a great basketball player, but also, maybe on the mom's side, was there a baseball?
I don't know.
I think it's basketball on the father's side, or flipped it.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
There's basketball and baseball on both sides. You
Yep.
can see his incredible athleticism. But I've always thought about that grip, with those tan, huge, strong hands and no glove. Lucas Glover, no glove. Lucas, no Glover, Glover.
Yes.
But, just like maybe a knuckle and a half strong with that left hand, and the way they sit
And not
right there on the
diminutive
face.
hands either.
Not diminutive hands, but for whatever reason, whenever I've seen Lucas Glover hit a golf ball, the name that comes to mind is, let's see if you possibly can come up with it. It's not likely.
Oh my gosh.
But it dovetails from the very thing we're talking about.
Yeah. I
Mickey Mantle.
Oh, wow.
So like if you look at those photographs of Mickey Mantle.
never wore batting gloves.
No batting glove. A lot of guys didn't then. Pine tar, halfway up the barrel, and he's ready to hit that baseball. That's what I feel about Lucas Glover. So yeah, I was lucky enough to get to know Lucas, shortly after he won that U.S. Open. What would he have been then? Late 20s maybe?
Yeah.
Now he's
2009. I mean, my God, that was 16 years ago. He's in his mid-40s, late 20s.
40s now. So just as you're saying, to see this evolution of men. So yes, we met for lunch with a friend of mine named Brian Koppelman, who's a well-known producer and director, and we ate at this Jewish deli on the Upper West Side, and I asked for an egg bagel and also avocado, and the guy says, "Yeah, we don't do neon colors here." In other words, there's a bagel, but there's not an egg bagel with that bright yellow, and there's certainly no avocado at this place. But anyway, so Luke came up.
If you want a slice of Kraft American cheese, we got you there.
Yeah, there they've got you covered, exactly. And so I made the mistake, it was a Sunday, I made the mistake of bringing Lucas the Sunday New York Times crossword puzzle. And the reason it was a mistake was
He'd already done it.
he had already done it. So I mean, this guy's, the way his mind works is the way I had. So anyway, just to go back to the very thing you were talking about. So when Lucas won that U.S. Open, he won on a Monday. Great, you win the U.S. Open. I mean, it's a lifetime achievement. We were both huge Arnoldophiles.
Yes.
It was his singular lifetime achievement.
Yep.
Everything else was gravy. Then the next week, or that week, he goes to Hartford and he goes on the range and he says, guys are looking at me different. And of course, because it's Lucas Glover, he knows the correct grammar is guys are looking at me differently. But because he's a jock, he's going to say guys are looking at me different. Perfect. Okay, and that's a great moment. We all want respect from our peer group. But now let's fast forward 15 years to your point of what you were saying earlier. He's been through some ups and downs like everybody who's enjoyed life has, including the both of us. And he's like, I'm not looking for, I get this word from Billy Harmon all the time, validation from that peer group anymore.
Yeah.
And this is the maturity, this is the growth of, of the human being. I'm getting it from deep within myself. And anyway, what professional athlete's going to think it? Not many. And then who's going to be willing to share it with you? Not many. And who are going to be willing to share it with you and then let you share it with others? Fewer yet. So yeah, we're both drawn to Lucas Glover for a reason.
Yeah, I want to ask you about, because you don't, again, this is so far from being a book about professional golf. It's woven into it in terms of kind of what it's like to be around these events, more so than, deep conversations with and doing recaps. It's more about stories around big events and people that are not all, big stars, many of whom are not. But I do want to ask you about meritocracy and where we're going, because I know that you're challenged by all this stuff. I am too, that at a time where in one side of their mouth, it's not just the people who run professional golf, it's the people who play it saying, God, it's never been deeper. There's never been a time that more guys can win. So at the same time, let's shrink the workforce. Let's make it less available, and let's make this such a closed shop where not only is the shop closed, that these kind of speakeasies that only if you got the secret handshake you can get into. we are going to make it so condensed that it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to penetrate this vortex, and like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? Mondays don't exist the way that they used to, and maybe we're too romantic. I don't know. I don't think so. Where are we going?
Well, I know you worry about it. I worry about it too. You know, we were drawn to this thing where shoot the scorers, make the money, get to play the following week, and that desperation of getting on tour was such a life force, and we were all so drawn to it, you know, in this era that you and I can romanticize because we lived through this last age of persimmon. And it doesn't really exist anymore. I mean, they call it the PGA Tour, but it's not a tour. That's okay, things change, but it's just not. People sort of drop in, and then they disappear for a couple of weeks. I mean, like you and I were at the Cricket Club event, and then they're coming here. Well, back in the day, to use one of Tiger's old phrases, everyone would have driven or flown from the Philadelphia Cricket Club to here in Charlotte, where we are, to get ready for the PGA Championship, which just concluded. Now, of course, they're all going home for a couple of days and then showing up. So everything has sort of changed. But one of Lucas's points is meritocracy is dead because there's just a sort of distribution of cash to everybody, and everyone's sort of fat and happy. But what's getting lost along the way is the desperation to stay in this game that means so much to so many of us. And one thing I've observed very much, you know, I'm 65, and you're a few years, some years younger than I, and of course there's many people listening who are far younger. And I'll run to people and say, yeah, you know, I came up with golf, it was great, it was Ernie, it was VJ, it was Davis,
right.
It was Tiger. It's like, that's really cool, but I grew up under Weiskopf, Lee Trevino, Big Jack, Arnold, Billy Casper. There was nothing like it. But for our era, they say, yeah, well, I caught Byron, Hogan, and Snead, and there was nothing like it. So there's always something, and we're always attached to that that we knew best. But having said that, the basic ground rules were you could have any personality defect in the world. As long as you comported yourself reasonably well on the golf course and played by the rules, it was just, what'd you shoot?
And yes, at the end of the day, it's not supposed to be, you know, I'm identified by this number, but there was also halfway through these competitions, and one of the reasons why I have admiration and appreciation for this pursuit is that if you're not good enough for 2 days, there's jeopardy and there's consequences. And to take this subset, okay, let me get this straight. You're the best, and let's make it even easier for you so that you're going to be there for four days. And I also understand that it is a TV show. It is a television show. These feature groups with 1, 2, and 3 is not arbitrary. But I've never had an identity crisis for what golf is at the professional level. It's niche. It just is. I don't like the idea that the best players, if you're the best players, why would you ever be concerned about relegation? Why would you ever be concerned? Why would that even enter your mind of, you know what, I need these no-cut events. And the notion that a couple of years ago, some of these guys walked into a room in Delaware and actually suggested one of the events be 30 or 40. Like every week for these signature series events is the Tour Championship. That's appalling to me. It really is.
Also boring.
Boring.
You don't have that. You know, I don't remember the year, but one year it was like Sean O'Hara, who nobody ever heard of, and all these named players at Tampa. And suddenly the Tampa event was like the best thing you ever saw in your life.
Yes.
Because it was David versus Goliath. So if you don't have 100, let's just call it 100 plus. I would really say 144 or 156. Let's just say 125, just to appease that group a little bit. If you don't have 125 starting out, you don't really have a chance for David and Goliath. And when you've got 70 guys, they're all Goliaths.
The pond is stocked. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And just this past PGA Championship, and I know I get it because it's a TV show on Thursday. They're bemoaning the first page of the leaderboard. And it's like, what is this, the 3M Open? It's weird how the 3M Open has replaced the John Deere. If you want to disparage a leaderboard, John Deere is now, you know, they are off the hook, and now 3M, God love them, they're the ones who apparently have the weakest field. First of all, 60 to 100 in the world rankings, and the PGA of America sticks their chest out that we have the strongest field. So you are somewhat familiar with these guys, Michael, because you see them on leaderboards on the PGA Tour periodically, and you go, Ryan Gerard and you know, Johnny Vegas, and my God, look at this leaderboard. Those guys may or may not be in the Masters tournament, many of them not this year. They may be in a US Open or an Open Championship, and it's funny with the Open Championship how we see Thursday and you go, I've never heard of that guy. And it amuses you. You're like, oh, he plays on the Australasian Tour. Isn't that neat?
Sure.
And so they get a pass for that. And then the US Open, the qualifiers. And this guy's been a beer distributor, and he got through sectional qualifying. He was in a 13 for 1 spot. And they have that as their texture. The PGA Championships, it's like these rank and file guys, hey, they are the best.
Yeah.
They are,
yeah.
But that doesn't serve them when the leaderboard is concluded on day one.
Right.
It's weird.
Right. Where'd you go to high school? In New Jersey?
Ridgewood High School,
Big public
class
high
of
school.
'85.
Okay, so I went to big public high school too. So like, if you've got 600 kids in your senior class and one girl becomes the homecoming queen, think of who all the other girls she had to become the homecoming queen. And that's what gives you an elevated status. Now, if you go to Miss Porter's, lovely Miss Porter's, great. But there's only 15 girls you got to be. So it's totally a different thing. And I like what we grew up on way better. And I used to love reading Dave Anderson as a kid in the New York Times, because some guy you never heard of was was a stroke. Our friend Mike Donald,
Yes.
First round of the Masters, and here's Dave writing him up for a big audience that never heard of him before. And then really, like in my case, literally for the rest of my life, I'll see the name and I'll follow him, he or she, for the rest of their playing career.
No.
And it was a great pleasure. I caddied as a kid in a pro-am, an LPGA pro-am, and Lori Garbazzi was in our group. Is that her pronunciation?
Yeah, yes.
And she was great. She was a lot of fun. And that's the only time I ever saw her in person in my life was caddying the group. And she, and years later, she ordered a pizza during a U.S. Open at Fort Worth because the play was so slow.
In the book, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, well, I was attached to Lori Garbazzi, and there is, I know we romanticize, but the romanticism comes out of deep, genuine love. And so I do miss this in this. It's interesting to hear super sophisticated people like you who really know golf, or even a Lucas Glover, talk about golf. I despise this phrase as an entertainment product, because to me, it is not an entertainment product. It is athletic competition that happens to be extremely entertaining with really dynamic people who don't appear to be cowboys. I know we've talked about this probably in the past, but actually are deep within themselves. So if you look like Rory McIlroy, I know this will be old news by the time we get, Rory McIlroy could have stopped and said 2 words about what the deal was with the driver. I would have thought he'd been well advised not to. But you know why he didn't? He's a cowboy deep inside. He's like, yeah, you're not going to tell me what to do. So, well, you're creating a mountain out of a molehill. Well, I choose to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's your choice.
Having not spoken in whether it was day one, it broke kind of midway through day 2. You and I could talk about that for 30 minutes. Throughout this book, again, the book is The Playing Lesson, and you go all over the country, and you have these really neat relationships. And one of the previous books that you wrote in the last couple of years, Ball in the Air, you focus on 3 people who had very little in common. Maybe they have more than I'm suggesting, but in the grand scheme of things, different phases of life, biologically, different backgrounds entirely. But what they have in common is golf. One of those people is Sam Reeves, and Sam Reeves is a friend of golf. Sam Reeves he doesn't just love golf. He gives to golf. He gives to golf and with this benevolence. And there's a line in the book about something as it relates to his wife. I think they've been married in excess of 60 years. And something about him saying, well, I aspire to do this. And you said, I just aspire. Yeah. Like he doesn't just aspire to do what he does. He does it. He's a giver. There's a benevolence in him that's real and always has been. And so anyway, I bring him up because he's such a sweetheart. But when you go out there, you love being on the Monterey Peninsula. I do too. I first of all, I love the climate. I love everything about it. and you're caddying in the what used to be the clam bake. Again, a lot of things change. That's long gone. Amateurs don't play on the weekends anymore. And you share the experience about caddying for Fred Propal, who is the president of the United States Golf Association. I didn't know that story about his brother. I didn't know that much about his background. I obviously knew where he came from. But aside from that, during that week, you made your way over to play golf because you need to play golf. Part of this book is about you and your continuing pursuit. I don't know why, Michael, it really got to me that you get paired up with this young guy who had slept in his car, and you're out. Were you at Pacific Grove? Is that where you were playing? Yeah. Public golf course, and you come across a guy who's sitting on a bench, and which is, that's not unusual. But as it turns out, this guy is somebody out there, not like a guy of substance, but he's a guy. He's got a life. He's got a reputation. He pursued golf. Chris Wags. I want you to tell, how on God's green earth does Michael Bamberger in fading light on a day on the Monterey Peninsula run into Chris Wags?
Wow. There's so much.
Come on.
I don't even know where to start. Let's just briefly on Sam. One of the things that Sam says, he's 90 now. He says the single greatest thing about this game is that it's a connector. It's a connector of people from all different walks of life. So what you kindly said about that other book where Sam says story, this young woman, Pratima Sherpa, and Ryan French is the Monday Q guy, and Sam Reeves, by background, couldn't be more dissimilar. If you put the three of them in the room, you got them to talk. They would talk all day and into the night, not just about golf, but golf would be a starting point because golf is a connector. So just to your point, so the kid, I was caddying for Fred. Now just a quick note on Fred, and sort of relates to the beauty contest idea. Fred Propal moved from Atlanta to Dallas about 10 plus years ago without golf clubs. Reason being, didn't play golf at all. 10 years later, he became the president of the USGA. And a guy who could shoot 80. That
no more doesn't happen 50 years ago for reasons yes.
So what about the skill set of the man to figure out something like, you and I have been devoted to this game for decades and decades and decades, haven't scratched the surface of us. This guy figured out enough in 10 years to become the USGA president. So that's astounding. Getting to see Fred in a personal way is astounding. I'm very fond of Fred. And he's got a wonderful instructor, Wes from Dallas. And Wes gave me a yardage sheet for the guy, and it says 9-iron 162. And I'm like, yeah, there's no way. He might occasionally hit a 9, but there's nobody
who's done it once.
140 to 180. Right. It's like all of us. But anyway, so caddying for Fred, I got to see another side of Fred, which is, the passionate golfer side. And yes, so I know you've caddied and played, and we've all, a lot of us have had the chance to caddy and play. So first day went great, second day not so great, blah, 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 didn't make the cuts, only 2 rounds. So then I went and played the Pacific Grove course, and I ran into this kid, Jason Snow is his name. Now just yesterday, and this is getting on a year and a half plus now. Just yesterday, Jason Snow sends me a text with his mom and dad. He just graduated, this kid who was sleeping in his car, just graduated from Chico State. So you get engaged in people's lives. Okay, so now to Chris Wagenseller. So we're playing this Pacific Grove course. Now to anybody who, millions know what the Pacific Grove course is, but for those who don't, there's a wonderful public golf course just down the street from Pebble Beach. When I say the street is 17-mile drive, called Pacific Grove. And here's what you have to do to play Pacific Grove. Go to the pro shop, give the guy your credit card, and he'll send you to wherever it's open. So we're playing it, we're playing the fading light, and we're playing the 18th hole there. Have you played it?
I have.
And you play to a, at this point in the gloaming, you're playing literally to a lighthouse with a red light, and you just played in that direction. And there's this guy sitting on the bench, Chris Wagenseller. We did not know a thing about him. He says, can I join you for 1 hole? And he's wearing I don't know what you call it, but you see it at Grateful Dead concerts, or you used to. It's like this woven, colorful shirt with the sleeves cut off, and this guy's, I grew up on Long Island.
It's like something that you would see like a Sherpa wear. I associate that garment. Val Kilmer had a cameo role in an episode of Entourage, and he was growing weed in Bel Air. Anyway, I know exactly. It almost looks like a woven kind of poncho you throw over your. Anyway,
that is what it is.
Yes.
I don't think Peter Millar deals.
They do not. The woven poncho is not in the fall line.
So this guy comes on. He's got 4 clubs under it. He drops his clubs to the ground. Takes out doesn't take out driver because he's got no bag. He's got this worn driver. He drops the golf ball on the teeing ground, not putting it on a tee, and he smashes one into the night. And he probably hit a 270, no practice swing, and it's perfect. It's a perfect shot. It's a perfect swing. And so come to find out, this guy was a gifted athlete, was working as a caddy, got fired from one club because he refused to use a rangefinder because it offended him. Now this next part makes my arm throb, and I got it from Sam, and I got it from other Cypress Point members. For those lucky enough to have ever played Cypress Point, which I know you have, 16th hole, there's very good par 3 over a canyon. This guy can take a golf ball. Now there's a landing area about 170. He can throw a golf ball 170 yards.
Things that, like, really, you would think that they wouldn't be able to be in the air that long.
They're so light.
Exactly.
It's just a little golf ball.
Yes.
How far can you throw a ping pong ball? 8 yards? How can you throw a golf ball 170 yards?
Yes.
But he can, and he was strong as an ox. He's had, his ups and downs in life. But anyway, but we had one hole together, and that one hole, this Jason Snow, this other kid I was telling you about, was able to tell him that his life's dream was to become a caddy at Pebble Beach. And this Chris Wagg said, yeah, I can set you up. And whether he could really set him up or not, I don't know, but it was enough, and this sort of gets to one of the themes of the book, encouragement.
Yes.
That he felt he had a path. And that's what we all sort of
like the thing you want in the game might be attainable, and suddenly, how realistic it's the attainability of it is doesn't matter. It's that you've met somebody in the most arbitrary way on a bench, and now this guy who you look at, and again, not to be presumptuous, you're going, I don't know, does he have a place to sleep? And this guy, before you're done in 30 minutes, tells you that the dream you have might be realized because I got a guy. I know somebody at the place where you want to ascend to and get to in golf, which to me is why, again, I get back to how on God's green earth is that guy sitting on that bench? Because you're like, there's enough light for me after my day of having a bag on my shoulder to go play 9 holes of golf, and you do.
Yeah.
And you go back, and Sam Reeves, who is, without ever making any desire to be a part of kind of the inner sanctum of golf, he knows who he is.
Well, more than that,
everybody knows who he is.
He sponsored him when he turned pro, when he was trying to make his turn as a tournament player. Yeah, it is actually amazing. And Gary, to your point, he knows a guy. Well, he probably does know a guy, but even if he doesn't know a guy, he's telling you that your dream is achievable. And I picked up on this thing. I'm not a Dylan-ophile, but I like Bob Dylan, like a lot of people do. But once Bob Dylan had this interview on CBS with Ed Bradley, and the question is to define destiny. And Dylan says, it's the early 60s and you're writing these songs and, you're dead broke and you turn to Bob Dylan. And he says, it seems like the corniest thing in the world, now that I'm going to say it out loud, but it's this belief deep within yourself, that what you want to be in your life will come true. And that's like Dylan said it with that emphasis, will come true. And that doesn't mean that it will come true. Mm-hmm. Like you and I can dream up winning the Masters, and it won't come true, but we can dream it and we can work towards it, and nothing can stop us from having the dream. And I think that's sort of all of golf on every level. And even here, I know I'm in my mid-60s, you're younger, but we still dream about getting better at this game, or maybe not getting worse, or playing such a course, or having such and such a feeling, or revisiting a feeling that we once had years ago. And that dream does not die. And I think that's why golf, unique among games, and there are many great games. Bowling is a great game, tennis is a great game, baseball is a great game. But golf seems to have something in us where it touches every single element of who we are. It's like people say, don't you get bored about writing golf? I do not get bored writing about golf because I'm always trying to figure out, would be a better way to say it, something new about this game.
There's a picture over your shoulder, your right shoulder, and it's of me with 3 very dear friends of mine. And people who don't get golf, I'm not confounded that they don't get it. It's slow, especially if you're watching the televised product It can be, somewhat challenging to understand. But if people will allow me why I love it, it gets back to whether it is the thing that you may want most out of the game, which is that feeling I had out of hitting it out of the center of the face. I want to do that again. Or it's, I want to caddy at Pebble Beach. Or it's, I want to go to certain places that I've never been to that people have told me are really, really neat. But the most important thing for me is to do it with people that matter to me, because it's not just, possibly winning a closeout against two of these guys and having that little, and tuck that one away until the following day. It really is the nourishment that I get. And I think part of it is the age that I'm at now, and part of it I think is also something associated with being a recovering alcoholic, where I spent many years trying to isolate myself from a lot of things, physical things, people, and also thoughts. And I didn't have real pain, but there were things that the easiest thing to do was to remove myself. Golf has always been, to what you said earlier, a connector. Connectivity in my life is very, very important. And I've said this before publicly, that I'm not suggesting that golf keeps me sober, but there are many things that are required of me every day, waking up every day an untreated alcoholic. And how do I choose to treat it? Do I treat it by being around people that think and have acted behaviorally like I have? Absolutely. But it's also the other people in my life that I neglected for so long, where I might have been there physically, but I was very far away because something else was in control of me. And so that part of it, to me, about these people that you bring up, and like you mention different people throughout the book, like I know this guy and he lives here, and I know this guy, and there's something particularly at the end of the book which I think speaks to exactly what it's all about. Like, for those people who don't get it, I understand why you don't, and I don't feel sorry for you that you don't, but I'm just telling you that the love that can come from being around this, being in it, wanting to get better, you dropping balls on practice putting green at Bay Hill, because you know what, it's kind of quiet out here. I laughed out loud when I read that, like, you son of a bitch. This is the Wednesday of the Pro-Am and of the Arnold Palmer Invitational. You had just gotten your putter extended because Faxon said you need a longer putter. You couldn't wait. You needed to see what it felt like to have the putter at a different angle, and you're dropping balls down on a chalk line. That too is why every day can be something. The game of golf, and it doesn't have to be that you shoot a low score. It could be a story you heard. It could be a connection you make. It could be a shot you strike. Or it could be a little anecdote that you want to apply to your own game the next day, which either you may retain or you may not. Most likely you won't. It's all of that stuff.
Yeah, you're great to share all that, and think of all the good you do by talking so openly about your own obsessive drinking.
Michael, let me just say this. You shared something with me years ago when I had spoken publicly about being an alcoholic. And I read that. It was a very lengthy piece. And I read that. And you and I, we don't know each other intimately, but you were trying, because you've seen other people who've tried to live a life of recovery. And you shared that with me. And I remember sitting on Park Avenue in Winter Park, Florida, in my car, and read that entire thing. So it's look, I don't do it. I have to ask myself when I do it, make sure you're doing this for the right reasons. I know that you're familiar with certain things in the recovery community. It's about attraction, not promotion. I'm not promoting the fact that I'm sober, and I don't have answers. I have my story, like other alcoholics do. But my grandest point is that golf because engagement is such a vital part of me living a life of recovery, is essential. And golf, which I used to, couldn't wait to see friends and play with friends, I turned my back on all of that because I was overcome by something that I couldn't control. And now I go out of my way to be with people that I either know exceptionally well or don't know that well at all. And by the end of the day, I know them better. And golf gives me that.
Well, I want to say a few things here, if I may. One is that one of the things that drew me to you as a person was our mutual friend Jaime Diaz telling me years ago. I said, yeah, I'll tell you, we were talking about that Winter Park course. Yeah. Where it sounds like maybe you read this piece about, go ahead.
Yes, yeah. I mean, well, the Winter Park 9 is right down the street from Park Avenue. It's right in his ending.
Oh, okay.
Jaime and I would play the WP 9 4 nights a week. Yeah.
Right. And I remember Jaime, and of course I knew you from Golf Channel, but I don't think I'd ever met you at that point, or maybe just in passing here and there. Jaime said, yeah, I really like playing with this Gary Williams. Like when Jaime said that, it's like, well, that tells me a lot right there about the person, talking about the connective nature of the game. The piece you wrote, the piece you mentioned is about a friend of mine named Fred Anton. And Fred Anton was, as you say, was in the Alcoholics Anonymous community. He would say, yeah, that second A is overrated. In other words, he didn't feel anonymity was an important part of it. But anyway, he was a compulsive golfer. We played hundreds of rounds of golf together. And then one day in his mid-80s, when his life was not going to get better, he walked off a pier into his death into the Delaware River. And when I was writing about that years ago, well, not so many years ago, in the book The Ball in the Air, it described his death in a period and paragraph. I don't know, period and paragraph. And then Sam Reeves, our mutual friend whose name has come up a lot in this conversation, he said, yeah, that's the most powerful sentence in this book. I don't know. We did a public thing. He said, I don't know. I don't know is the starting point in my life for everything. I don't know anything. Now I do know some things, but like as a writer, as a husband, as a father, as a friend, as a golfer, as a reader, I feel like I don't know anything, and that keeps me at it. So this connection, like, it's not unusual. Now, of course, the game is awash in alcohol, so it's not that surprising you see people with drinking problems who are also golfers. But leaving that aside, I'd like to ask you this question, if it's not too personal.
No.
Is the compulsion for drinking and the compulsion for golf, is there any similarity to the two, or are they different?
It never applied to me, but while behaviorally, there are a lot of things that alcohol, and it's, I've learned this, that it's not the drinking, it's the thinking. I'm not a particularly compulsive person. So no, that part of it does not apply to me. It doesn't mean it wouldn't apply to tons of other people. And look, you touch on this in the book as it relates to Grayson Murray. And it's interesting how you wrote about Grayson, because to the point about this friend of yours who was your guy, older than you, but he was your guy. He was your golfing buddy. And as he progressed in life, and he's living this sober life, and then there were things that were starting to be taken away from him, his ability to walk the golf course that you guys shared, and then the ability to play on a regular basis started to be diminished. And then suddenly one day he walks off the end of a pier and takes his own life. And one of the things, maybe the most powerful thing, I've learned a lot of things from people who tell the damn truth. And that's what you get in the recovery community, because there are people who know me best who would say to me, this is not an easy statement to volley back. You make lying so easy. I didn't have any choice. I was MacGyver every day. It was a high wire act to get from waking up in a fog and feeling guilty and full of shame and like shit physically and saying, okay, not today. And then eventually I would drink, and then the next day would turn out the same way. And so it's a web of lies. And so your life is all dishonesty. And then there's a term called rigorous honesty. Not just like conveniently being honest, rigorous honesty. So you hear all these vulnerabilities from people, and one of the things that I heard about the disease is that it can be treated, but it can't be cured. And so that's important. There's an important distinction there. And that alcoholism is suicide in slow motion. It may actually be the act, or it may be other things. It may be something that you've done because you've damaged your body so significantly, or you drive off the road accidentally because you're drunk. And so, you know, your friend's story struck me at a time where it was too early in my own recovery to really understand that. And here I am some years later with a greater understanding. But let's get to the Grayson Murray part, because I wrote about him. I was on a flight to London. Was actually on the air when I heard that he had passed. I saw Grayson 3 weeks in a row before he took his own life, and I knew him. And we shared that, and we shared conversations. And I even wrote this. I said, when two alcoholics see each other, when they say, "How are you?" it's not a throwaway line. It's no, son of a bitch. How are you? And what I saw from him in those weeks leading up to that day was a timidity and a fragility to him, which touched me. Because when you're numb, you kind of tend to be truculent and irritable and discontented, and you're kind of a bully in life. You have a lot of thoughts, you're pissed off at everybody. He was none of those things, which really got to me. But it also gets to me in another way. Fragility is a great thing to feel, but it also means that the next day may not be as good as what the preceding day was. And so the term "just for today" is the most important thing. Him winning the Hawaiian Open doesn't change the fact that he doesn't become more of a recovered alcoholic. Not at all. Like for the day that my career went in a very, very different direction, I woke up and drank, and anybody who would say, "Wait a second, you were going to be on television that day. Why in the world would you do that?" Because that's what alcoholics do. That's what they do. It's insane behavior. It's unrecognizable behavior from the people who know you well. So when you wrote about Grayson and you mentioned Robert Garrigus, was there anything that you were trying to convey? Was there anything you were trying to share? Is it related to, yes, this it looks like, God, he's found this path of peace and success and achievement. What were you trying to share when you wrote about him?
Well, I know this won't be any surprise to you when I say this. We don't know.
Yeah.
We have no idea. We have no idea. We have no idea about anything. We have no idea what, all these, first of all, it's so hard to get on the PGA Tour. You know, you keep your card for a couple of years, you're in the elite of the elite. Now you've won the Hawaiian tournament, you are off the charts great at this really narrow, really difficult thing to do. Now you have this, beautiful girlfriend you might get married to, you should have some financial security, you got a job for the next couple of years. Isn't it all so great? Yeah, but here's what we don't know. We don't know what's really going on with the person. People saw you on Golf Channel all the time. We didn't know what you were doing that morning.
Yeah.
I would never have known. So I think to walk through life with this question of what is really happening here, and trying to view everything that you encounter in life really literally with more empathy, including, like, I would say Rory's kind of half nutty behavior this week of just not explaining it. He's got his reasons. I'd like to know what they are.
Sure.
And I'm a reporter, I'm going to try to explore them. But that's terrible to actually bring up Rory in the context of what we're talking about here, because that's meaningless. This is, we're talking about life, but like, we don't really know how hard it is for the other person to get through life. And let's just be a little more warm and kind-hearted. And like, I'll tell you, this always struck me. You've got a better memory for this sort of thing than I. But one year, Tiger won one of those FedEx events. I think it was FedEx at Harding Park, and I think he beat John Daly in the playoff. And I think Daly yipped or missed you never saw Tiger have an empathetic look to anybody. But you could see he's sort of related to John Daly, because John Daly was a mega talent at the Fred Couples, Tiger Woods level. That's where I would put John Daly. And, except for his whole life corrupted by these demons, and Tiger knows something about those demons.
Yeah.
And Tiger doesn't want to win a tournament with the guy yipping and missing. But more to the point was, I just saw for a nanosecond Tiger's face, like, you would never say felt sorry for the guy, like, it's tough. It's tough to make that putt when you really want to make it. I'd rather we just go. I would have liked to have beat him with, a 2 to his 3 or something.
Yes.
And it was neat to see. You don't see that very often from Tiger Woods, and we don't know what he's like. I imagine in his private life he's very different. But yeah, so what I'm to get to really to the heart of your question about what I'm trying to convey with the Grace and Murray is exactly what you just said. Is like, we don't know really what it's like to be that other person.
And I would also say for this is the human condition. We all do this. I wish I could have whatever, fill in the blank. I should have known. You don't. That's the most important thing. You just don't. And like you said about, somebody being petulant in a moment, or dealing with somebody at the end of the day. I don't handle things expertly. Are you kidding me? At all. But I feel like I do a better job with awareness now of, I have no idea what kind of day they've had.
Right.
So it doesn't mean that they are troubled by things that are extraordinarily difficult, whether it be neurologically or whatever, or addiction. I don't know what your day was like. I don't know what in empathy and pause, just for a second if you can, which is a hard thing to do at this time. But it's, for Grayson, the one thing that and again, the thing that made me kind of understand that I really do finally understand about what he was dealing with and what I deal with is that when I found out that he took his own life, it didn't make me sad that I wasn't surprised. It actually made me kind of think that I have a better understanding of it all because I wasn't surprised, because the fragility of it all, and the term just for today is just that. It is.
You did the single best thing you could when you saw the guy. You said, "How are you?" And meant it. Do you watch this John Hamm series?
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So when he says to his
everybody
ex-wife,
in this room is a Friends and Neighbors fan.
Yeah. How about the backswing the guy makes? It's beautiful. But then he sort of, I don't know what he does in the downswing, but it looks like an athlete gone bad on the downswing.
Let's get to some other stuff here. That Brad Faxon, the relationship you have with Brad, there are certain people in golf that really are next level nerddom. And he has it all, man. He has cornered the market on wanting to, put on some waders and go out there. And I know that Gil Hanse indulged him, and he kind of lent his thoughts to Jonathan's Landing. He loves design. He loves talking about the golf swing. He's got 5 million putters, but he's had one gamer his whole life, like Crenshaw and Tiger, even though he departed for that temporarily, and Jones. Everybody dates putters. They never make a full-time commitment. But he's got all these putters. He loves equipment. He's a gear geek. Being around Faxon, what's that like?
Well, Brad and I met when we were both in our early 20s in the mid-1980s. And I'm not comparing my life in golf to Brad's in any way, but all these years later, we're still struck by the mystery of the game. And I get a kick out of the fact that Brad's got a list of every teaching pro that he's paid to have a lesson with, and that's. Do you happen to know the number?
I don't, but
it's way over 100.
Just along those lines, I did an instructional series with him, and it was all short game. It was 5 30-minute shows. And one of the questions I asked him was, what's the difference for you between a chip and a pitch?
Oh.
Okay. It was as if I asked him what the meaning of life was. And he went, He called 25 people for their own definition. He wanted, not because he needed them to give him a definition he liked the best, he was so curious about what the definition of a chip and a pitch was for these people that he loves in the game of golf. He called 25 people over the course of the 36 hours we were together.
What did he settle on, or what did you settle on?
Well, what he settled on was, and again, I don't remember exactly verbatim, but that pitching involves some hinging. There is an element of the hinge, whereas with chipping, if you're decent at it, you don't hinge at all. It's not about length; it's more about that than it is anything else.
Well, that's very good.
Yeah.
So just very quickly on that. So one time we were at where did they play the LA Open, Riviera, and I got into a conversation with Bryson. And, excuse me, it wasn't. It was Memorial. For sure, it was Memorial. And I said something about tee height, because he varies his tee height quite a bit. He's like, okay, tee height. And you could see he was going into the encyclopedia of what he feels about tee height in different situations and how he would use it. So I once asked Tom Weiskopf that very question about chipping and pitching. He said the following, and this has got to be on your list, but this hinging, I never thought of that. That's great. And I would say when you putt from off the green, that is chipping and you don't hinge.
Yes.
But this is what Weiskopf said. A pitch spends more time in the air than on the ground. A chip spends more time on the ground than in the air.
Again, that's why I think that's what, there are probably dozens of definitions that I would say, I like that, and I like that, and I like that, and I like that. And that's why, people's interpretation of how they play, what they see, the vagaries of all of it is why it's all, in the end, so much fun. I want to get to some other things in the book. Padre Harrington, another guy. You said something that, again, I'm reading this book I'm like, I got to finish the book. And you said, when you ask him something, he always acts surprised. Like there's not like he's never thought about it before, but first of all, he's got very interesting mannerisms. He's got, the way that he speaks and expresses himself. I thought that was funny. Him talking about his reaction to Rory missing the putt on 16 at Pinehurst at the U.S. Open last year, he said something about what a player has to do. Like he thinks, not like I guess it is pretty vital. It's kind of essential. Share that anecdote, because I think that's important.
It's the thing, actually, we've been talking about this entire time together. It's relentless honesty. So like when what was your phrase for honesty before about?
Rigorous honesty.
Rigorous honesty. So my friend Fred Anton that we've been talking about.
Yes.
I often describe him, he was a compulsive truth teller. He could not tell the truth. In his recovery, he had to. And Tiger, for everyone to say about him, part of his greatness, no question about it, was, what am I doing bad? Get better at it. 98% of us, what am I good at? And it's fun, and let's keep going. So what Patrick was saying there after about Rory missing that putt. First off, the first putt was a disaster. In my opinion, was a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Not
agreed.
Like a disaster. Like you hate to say it for a world-class player, it's an F for that ball to go how many? 30 inches past the hole?
Yes.
It's downhill fast, and you're going to lose it after the hole.
Yes.
That ball's got to come up an inch short, and you tap in, no stress. There is no such thing as an inch pass, because an inch pass can lead to 30 inches, and 30 inches, of course,
late
on a Sunday afternoon,
on a U.S.
completely
Open golf
missable.
course.
So what Padraig said there was only he, because he's the only person who can answer it, has to double down on deep truthfulness of why did I miss that putt? Was I ready to pull the trigger when I pulled the trigger? And now they both are Rotella people, and Rotella talks all the time about you pre-shot, and it's boring after a while. But what it really, really means, as Padraig was getting to me, was, are you ready to play that shot when you're playing that shot? Now there are protocols of rules and social propriety that make you play the shot by a certain time. But you've got to get your head into a place where you really can make the stroke you want to make, and sometimes you can't. And Rory couldn't there. And my theory, just the theory, I wouldn't know, but we do that because part of why we're drawn to the game is he never really got over the downhill part of it. That left him with the anger that you'd feel.
I've always found him a really interesting study. Look, the way he hits a golf ball is really neat to watch in a land of aliens. He stands out in terms of the launch and all that stuff, but it's the other stuff and him trying to get better, and he's getting better. I walked with him all 4 days in the US Open. I actually thought that his tightness and his discomfort started on the 14th tee. Mm-hmm. He hit a quick hook off 14. He hadn't done it all week. Mm-hmm. And I didn't go, oh God, but again, that was, and then the second was okay. He actually I thought he drew a break in terms of where that ball landed. And I thought he hit a kind of ordinary second, and he managed to get up and down, and he made 4. And then on 15, that to me, and again, I've never been in that arena, but I've again, covered it like you have, and I'm just talking about where things were going. And I think it preceded, everything was leading to the jolting final moments, but I thought that the choice he made to play the shot he played on 15 was peculiar to me. And yes, he hit a drive in the fairway on 16, but I know what his kind of most comfortable shape was, and I felt like there was a little bit of steerage there. But he did what he needed to do, which was to get it in the fairway on what is essentially a 4.5. And I thought his second shot was fine. The first putt was not great. And so all of a sudden, now you've left with this. That jolts you. His tee shot on 17, he hits it in the left bunker. He's got a simple chunk and run bunker shot. He manages to get up and down. All the things that happened from the 14th tee to me were a reflection of a guy who had entered a space that was choking him out, and his body and his mind were not cooperating. And in the two particular moments, 18, I don't think people from that, for him to be given that, Michael, at the end of all of this, might have been the most cruel thing, because it was a putt that the assumption is, well, he's got to make this. And here you have a bleeder that's melting left to right downhill, and you've already missed something shorter than that. That, to me, was like, this is why this game is just, it's beautiful and it's also evil. That putt on the 18th hole, like, don't give him that. But again, what are you doing hitting it there? What are you doing going past the hole? Again, that 5 holes, to me, a book could be written on those 5 holes.
And I would say, to your point about missing that putt on the 72nd hole on Father's Day, no one would agree with this, I don't think. He basically had the same putt to win at Augusta National, because that putt is totally, completely missable.
Totally.
And if you miss it, you're probably going to miss the next one too. And then Justin Rose has won a playoff with a tap-in par.
Yes.
And now you've won. Now you've lost the U.S. Open in Los Angeles. You've lost the U.S. Open at Pinehurst. You've lost at the old course, and now Augusta National. It's like, how much more can this guy take? So, just as someone who admires and likes Rory, I was so relieved for him for that putt to go in. But of course, I'm looking through the eyes of a yipper, where no putt's easy. But that particular putt is not an easy putt.
No, it is not.
There are no easy putts.
I thought what Harrington said in your book was, you have to understand why you missed it. And he also said, which I thought was really interesting, because I'm actually, for the first time in forever, I'm working on my pre-shot routine on the putting green. And he talked about how it's more important what you do before you actually strike the putt. Yeah. And it wasn't like a light went on, but I'm like, God, yes, that's absolutely true. Why do we value the think box before you get into the play box? What's the point of having it if you're not making it of equal value? Let me get to something else about a place that people may not know that much about, but maybe a little bit more over the last couple of years, because Augusta National is trying to raise it up, and that is the patch. Explain to people, because you write about it in the book, what the patch is.
Well, the patch is the Augusta Municipal Golf Course. It's been around since the 20s. It's called the patch because a longtime general manager at Club Pro there, had a vegetable garden just off the 10th tee. the black experience, the black golf experience at Augusta National, in Augusta, Georgia, extremely rich one, chiefly because of caddies at the country club and at the National. The late Jim Dent would be a prime example of this. Carl Jackson, Carl's brothers. But many people came from the Sand Hills section, just above the country club. They caddied at the country club, they caddied at the National. And the Augusta Municipal course, the Patch, was the home course for a lot of working class black men who didn't have access to play anywhere else. And even Jim Crow being Jim Crow, it wasn't until the early 60s, you know, in my lifetime and almost in yours, that they had legal and social comfort access to the Patch. So the Patch is a beloved public golf course. It's funky, it's not great, it's built on the side of a hill, it's got a grass range, the balls are like every different color you can imagine and condition. I've played there a lot over the years, and it's a place where, you know, and I write about this, I have often over the years, at some point, almost every round of golf, you start with a number and it turns into a story.
Yes.
And that's sort of what happens at the Patch a lot. And a lot of the guys there are retired, so they've got time to tell the stories. And just one very quick amusing one. There was a guy that Jim Dent. You got time? We have time.
Well, yes.
Got him.
That's the
Jim
beauty of all of this.
Okay.
I say when we're done. Tyler's going, no, you don't. I do. The guy in my ear.
So Jim Dent grew up in the Sand Hill section of Augusta National. There's a guy named Charlie Choice.
Yes.
And
this is great.
And this guy's got as much. Oh, pardon. I've got a cramp in my leg.
You got a cramp.
Oh dear. Sorry about this, fellas.
I love this.
Ouch.
I love that he's got a Charlie horse. It's from
Charlie
walking Quail Hollow the last couple days. And this is also why I love.
This is not scripted.
No, it is not. And this is also why I love being able to do these long form conversations. But Michael Bamberger getting a Charlie horse.
I swim a lot.
They usually come in the middle of the night, and you think that there is, you know, a python that has made its way into your calf muscle.
I swim, and sometimes when you're swimming, you get them, and the lifeguard will say, "Did this fall apart? Are we okay?"
We are not editing that out, by the way.
And the lifeguard will say, "Are you okay?" And be like, "I would be way better if I could just be left alone, but I appreciate what you're doing." Okay, Charlie Choice had Jim Dent was a mega talent. Charlie Choice, as everyone says in Augusta, was better than he. But Charlie Choice, as Jim Dent told me, only about 2 months before he died, by the way. Are we okay?
Yeah.
Jim Dent told me it's only about maybe 2 months before he died that Charlie Choice had all the shots, all the game. He had the short game everybody wanted, but he was more interested in the nightlife than the day life, whereas Jim Dent wasn't. So he moved from Augusta to Atlantic City, which was a common enough move.
Yes.
Jim Dent made the same move, and he got a job, and he was John Gotti's
amazing driver
and chef, and golf confidant. Not to Gotti, wasn't a golfer, but to those in the circle who were. So they drive. So Charlie Choice and one of Gotti's guys, I'm not going to say the hotel's name, drive down to Pinehurst. And they get there, and Charlie Choice, you know, let's be real about it. This is early 1970s. There's an enormous black man, probably a little rough around the edges, and, you know, a mobster.
All of a sudden, there's not a room for him.
And all of a sudden, there's not a room for him. And Charlie Choice says, yeah, that's okay, there's no problem. So he leaves, finds a payphone, makes one call. And then as they tell the story at the Patch, and this is why you love Participatory, 15 minutes later, old Charlie had the best suite that hotel had. Well, we can all guess what happened.
Of course.
And you're only going to get a story like that. Of course, golf promotes stories like that all the time, but at a place like the Patch. And as you say now, Augusta National's putting money into it. I only hope that when they finish,
don't
as good as it was.
sanitize it to the point that it's not what it was. I've never been there. But I hope it's, look, it's great that the resources and Augusta National is doing what they're doing, Tiger's getting involved, but you want it to be, like you said, there's a card room and the stories you hear and the things you see, like that grit, that texture, that soul, I hope it's still there.
There's a guy there every day, today, who caddied for Eisenhower.
So Bobby Cigarette Jones, caddy for Eisenhower, you know, obviously was around Jones a little bit, Clifford Roberts. You said that he shared with you that he thought Ike was cool, which I never have heard anybody say that. I've heard a lot of very admirable things said about Dwight Eisenhower. He said, yeah, he was cool. And he liked the fact that he used profanity. When he would get frustrated on the golf course, he'd hit a bad tee shot and say, God damn it.
Yeah. Like all of us.
Like all of us.
I named a tree for him.
Yes.
How about the obits for that tree after that tree died? Have you ever heard Billy Payne be more serious about anything?
No.
Sad news. We lost a dear friend today. A tree.
A tree. And they took that tree and turned it into a lot of very nice little mementos that
including the wine cellar at Augusta National. And the guy who did the work, I hope I can tell this story, because you never know with Augusta National.
Right.
The guy who did the work, he said, yeah, this wood's too wet, I can't work with it. And then Billy, or no, excuse me, not Billy, probably Fred Ridley said, he said, yeah, this really, no, it was Billy. He said, yeah, this really means, it definitely was Billy.
Yeah.
He says, yeah, this wood really means a lot to us. And then he said where the wood came from the Eisenhower tree. And the guy's like, okay, it makes no sense, but okay.
As I say to people, it's Oz. Two last things. I literally had this conversation yesterday. We all like a free pass at things. We all like that. No, nobody wants to be described. Well, actually, I think probably some freeloaders are okay being called freeloaders. I love the way that you worked your way into the Senior Open Pro-Am through one of the most regal brands in golf, and regal brands, period, and that is Rolex. Just share that story about Arnaud and having lunch and wine, and all of a sudden, all right, I'm in the Senior Open Pro-Am.
Yeah, so a phrase that I use a lot in the book is, I got invited to play, I got myself invited. It's just truthful. No one's inviting me to anything, and why would they? So I got myself invited to the Senior British Open, where I got to play with Gary Player, which was a great experience. It was great in every which way, but I sort of got vetted for it by this very dashing Rolex executive, Arnaud, and the interview, not that he knew me beforehand, was wine and lunch with Mark Steinberg waiting in the wings. And I'm literally thinking you probably have more important things to talk about with Mark Steinberg than I, but that's not how Arnaud rolls. He rolls yeah, let's hang out, let's see how this goes. But he's not even thinking, let's see it. That's my thing, let's see how this goes. He's just let's hang out. Because they're European.
Yes.
They're just different.
Right.
I don't know. It's also lovely, but then he did invite me to play in the Senior Open and play with Gary Player, and who I've played with before, and I imagine you have as well. And it is a trip to play golf with Gary Player.
It is.
And he hits everything with hook spin. Every slice putt, hook spin. I don't know how you hit a slice putt with hook spin, but Gary Player does it.
The funny thing that Jack Nicklaus said to me within the last year, it was actually before they hit the ceremonial tee shots at Augusta National this year. He said, last year I'm out there and I look over at him and he's hitting bunker shots before we're going to hit one tee shot. He's like, that sums it all up.
Yeah.
Gary Player, as if he's warming up for the 1965 Masters. He's going to hit one ball with one club, and he's going through his bag, and he actually threw balls down in a bunker on the tournament practice area.
The only thing funnier would be is if he putted.
Truly.
Because they used to. They would start on one, and then they kept playing.
Yes.
They played from 9.
Yeah, it was Doug Ford. To me, years ago when I was doing local radio, we would do an over/under how many holes he would play before he would just say, "I'm done." Right. The last thing is at the end of this book that I want you to share. For a couple reasons, because it's powerful and it's poignant and it's very sweet, and it's something shared by someone that you and I both have great affection for, Jaime Diaz, who contributes here, who's one of the most important people in my career. He came along where I got to spend time with him at a time when I don't know that he knows it. I needed him most because of, it was like the fellowship that I needed on a regular basis with someone whose company I loved. Share what he said at this event that you were at that kind of sums up why it is that you wrote this book and why it is that you got your putter regrip with the same putter grip that Tiger's always used, and why you dropped balls down on the Bay Hill putting green during the API because you had a new length in your putter. just because. What did he share that this book kind of concludes with?
Well, first, Gary, I want to say this is such a joy for me. You know, there are thousands and thousands of writers out there who would love to have this opportunity just to talk about something they've worked hard on with someone who appreciates it and get into it a little bit. So thank you very, very much for the opportunity. So I've run for some years now a little fall event. It's named for a golf character. Many people would know the name Chivas Irons. It's called the Chivas. And this last year, we had the final one, and we went around the table and people talked about their golf experiences. And our friend Jaime Diaz was the last to speak. And what he spoke about was the connection you get through golf. And he said, and this is what Jaime said, and that's what's going on in this room right now. This incredible love we have for one another, even if we don't know each other on a daily basis. But the love that golf can bring to people from all sorts of different backgrounds. He says, that's what's going on right now in this room. And then we all stood up and had dessert. So it was just a lovely way to end that evening. And Jaime has that unique ability, like Michael Murphy did, and I wouldn't know too many others. I think Trevino does, to really capture what the game means to them and express it to other people. I would say Murphy did in Golf in the Kingdom. I would say Jaime does in everything he says and writes. And I would say Trevino does when he's talking about golf. And there have been a few others over the years. But anyway, yeah, so we're not doing this whole Jaime thing, but we are both lucky to have Jaime to have enriched our lives. If I could just offer one last thing along the same lines. So if you write a lot like I have, you know, every once in a while you get off one sentence that just kind of conveys, like the first sentence of my second book is called To the Lynx Land. And the first sentence is, I think the man like my wife. And the man was Vijay Singh's caddy. And the place was, my wife and I were newlyweds, Christine, and we were about to take an overnight train in Europe from one place to another. And this guy wasn't hitting on Christine, but he was paying undue attention to her. He was smitten. Yeah, he was smitten. And you know, you don't know if you're going to wind up in the same cabin as the guy. By the way, the guy who was in our cabin that night, as Christine and I were taking an overnight train, you may not know the name, even as much as you know, was a guy named Steve Bottomley. Steve Bottomley was a European journeyman. When Daly and Rocco played off on the old course, this Steve Bottomley was one shot out of that playoff. And that's like the only thing. Yeah, I think Mark Brooks was
in the 1995 Open Championship.
Yeah, check it out. It's right there.
Of course he was. For the same reason that Chris Wags was on that bench. Come on.
Golf's weird. Golf's weird. So, all right. So, I think the man like my wife. We talked about this other one sentence. I don't know, but right around the same point as Jaime. Says right before that, David Clark, you probably know him, he's a longtime head pro at Pine Valley, good golf course in New Jersey. For those who aren't familiar with it, very difficult. And he played in this event. And he won the event, and he was describing how it was a very companionable group. And then he said the following, or maybe I wrote the following, describing what he said: everybody needs encouragement. 3 words: everybody needs encouragement. Everybody needs encouragement. And we get it from club pros in this game. We get it from our friends. We get it from our spouses. We get it from our kids. You know, people have different ways of expressing it. But I would say it's a universal truth. Everybody needs encouragement. And I felt good writing it because it's so simple and it's so true. So I'm going to try to carry that on in my life here on out.
And really along those lines, in the previous page to what you shared about Jaime's thought to conclude that evening, speaking to a young colleague of yours whose career is just beginning, James Colgan, he said, just keep going. Oh, come on. Yeah. I mean, what do you mean by that? That's as simple as it gets.
That's for you to figure out.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, keep going.
Yeah.
I've heard Tiger say that innumerable times. You know, random Sunday pairing gets paid with some guy from South Africa. He's never going to see the guy again. The guy's basically a 75 shooter, but somehow he's found his way into a Sunday round or whatever with Tiger.
Yeah.
So yeah, keep going.
The playing lesson. The last thing I will say about, as I started talking about the cover of the book, this is my working copy. We have a hard copy available June 3rd. It's interesting, I don't know if this was deliberate, that Michael on this leaderboard, normally on a golf leaderboard, the guy who's over par is in black and the guys who are under par are in red. We all have a little vanity in us if we play this game. So Michael Bamberger, even though he was plus 18, you go, wait a second, is he 18 under?
Okay, in fairness, I did pick up immediately. I told the editor that, and he expressed that to the art department. They were like, "Yeah, we don't care."
We don't care. They don't play golf, clearly, and their lives are not as full as they would be. Thank you for the friendship. Thank you for the indulgence to come in here. And let me just say last thing about this book. This book is about all the things that not only golf can give you, but the things in just 1 year that you experienced, shared, and captured. And lovers of golf, if you have an affection for the game, this book will get to you, because it certainly got to me. Michael Bamberger, thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
All right, again, the book, The Playing Lesson, A Duffer's Year Among the Pros. He's not a duffer. Anybody who plays ping-eye-2 berylliums has got a little residue of game in there. We'll see you next time on this Five Clubs Conversation.